So, time for tea talk. And Storm Dara is currently blowing outside the window. Ooh, there you go. But
blowing the teapot lid off.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're having a bit of a chat and a reminisce, I would say, of a warm summer's day.
Hazy days of summer.
In August. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, sorry. Straight in there.
Well, hot tea is order of the day. But like I say, on that day, I seem to remember there was some hot blasts. So, Costa Beck. Now, Costa Beck is we later found out, the most northerly chalk stream in the UK.
So, this is, a curiosity, and, I'm like, we know of this waterway, don't we? We've seen it and remarked on how clear it is, but sort of dismissed the fact that it would be a chalk stream. And then, sure enough...
Well, you know an awful lot more about chalk streams than I do.
No, but it just has that feel, doesn't it? And, as always, we don't really prepare before we do these walks, and then we find it and we look back.
I don't think that's a problem.
But no, when we remember what we want to look at when we get back in, and absolutely.
But the start of the walk, because there's a lake. Is it a pond? There's a pond, isn't there, with waterfowl on?
Oh yes.
As you come to the end of Pickering.
As you're driving out towards Middleton.
So end of Pickering towards Middleton,
just
you're quite right.
Just before the pond, there is a footpath sign that looks like it leads you nowhere, doesn't it? And we pop down there, and
kids will know it.
Yes.
It's one of those. It's one of those.
It's right
isn't it?
At the end of the.
So I've got a few distinct memories of this walk. The first one is that normally when we start a walk, we're starting in similar surroundings, but we're literally walking out of a housing estate, and I would say within 300 yards, you had no idea there was houses about.
Full countryside.
Full countryside, side of a beautiful stream that we had its full glory as soon as we got to that first bridge. So crossing from Pickering side to, let's say, Middleton side, when you stood on that bridge, absolutely crystal clear.
And flowing like a good one.
Oh, yeah. Because there'd been some rain that week, hadn't there?
Yeah, we'd had a torrential downpour overnight, and then the whole of the morning, and it was swollen. It was...
But that weed, dancing under the water as the flow, it was just flowing. Absolutely. It was absolutely crystal clear.
It did fascinate us on that bridge, didn't it, for a while?
We stood.
Again, we were at that point still saying, well, it was like a chalk stream.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, we're over the bridge, a very good bridge. We've come across some dodgy ones this year, but very substantial, very well kept, onto the Middleton side. And what was notable about that bank?
I was going to say loused. I'll say loused.
Go on then.
Loused with rowan trees. Which I learned something about watching Vera on TV, about cultivated or natural.
Yeah, versus the
red
orange
occur
naturally in nature, and then the orangey yellow ones are the ones that we've
cultivated.
But they'd been planted, hadn't they? Because there was red, there was a yellow, there was a...
No, it was lovely.
Yeah.
And we saw some wildlife. We saw a couple of deer. It wasn't early in the morning, was it? It was quite late for deer to be about. Yeah. But they were there. Unfortunately, they were a bit too far away to be seen on film. But not to worry, we had a good view of them. And also, something we'd never seen before, but I don't think we've seen before, was let's say a dozen. I think back, there might have been more than a dozen, of heron. Just all, I was going to say stood, sat.
They were having a conflab, weren't they? I mean, we haven't looked up the collective now, but I'm going to call it, there was definitely a quorum. There was some form of meeting going on, because we've never seen so many flocking together, have we? I mean,
I'm not sure I've seen more than one heron. I don't know if I've seen two together.
They don't look like they will keep close.
Well, look how much room they'd need. They're massive.
I know.
But I reckon they were all there discussing their plan of attack to go to the trout farm. That was another few hundred yards.
Flaps down the road. Yeah,
yeah, it is for them, isn't it?
Wings.
And I mean, the trout farm was there because, again, as we've mentioned, the stream was beautifully clear.
Well, I've done a little bit of research into Costa Beck, because the name always fascinated me. And you know, in the Iron Age, it was a settlement. It was a very prosperous settlement, and obviously along such a wonderful stream that was so well stocked with food, it was absolutely the place to settle. And since then, it's, you know, developed into a very successful trout farm.
Yeah.
And watercress farm.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the difference there was when we walked over that bridge, rather than leaving a nice area, we're into a horrible spooky wood, which I didn't enjoy at all, because it was very low, enclosed, dark,
thorny,
not nice at all.
Creaking as well. And we'd gone from bright sunshine into this eerie, muddy area. But anyway, swiftly through that, onto Costa Lane.
Where there was that crikey.
It's a quarter of a century old now.
Scary, isn't it? Pickering Millennium Wood, which seems new, but like you say, 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
Oh, my life. But anyway, not to dwell on that. And then we started to see evidence of the dismantled railway when we got to, what was the name of the property that was right near it?
Right, it was just called well, there was Low Costa Mill, there was Low Costa Cottage, but then where the actual historic, you know, railway buildings were, that are now just 3 cottages, that was just called Costa Beck. And do you remember the sign?
Yeah, it was an old wheel, wasn't it?
Yeah,
a railway
wheel. And looking back again at the map, it looks like the railway line went across our path back in the day. And then beyond there, it was field margin walking, wasn't it, really? It was rutted because we'd had rain,
dull.
A few dodgy gates, a few very wet gate holes, sort of jumping.
So all I remember about that is muck spreading, which wasn't pleasant. But can you remember the 2 swans? They were nesting in a field dyke.
Yeah, just as we crossed over. Yep, and it was...
You know, of all the places. Horrible.
Yeah.
Well, obviously,
Yeah,
they must have found it was
their
sheltered
spot,
or something like that. And then the other thing we found along there, because I remember did you spot it from the distance and say it was a container? Because it looked odd, because it was on a gantry. So we're probably a few hundred yards away. Yeah, so a gantry made of scaffold with what looked like a container on top of it. But when we approached nearer, it looked like it was some kind of circuit. It was laid out with that fake grass, but with refuges made out of, are they called IBAs? The big cubic meter water
or oil, or
the cage that goes round and protects
them.
them.
It looks like they'd cut away the plastic and just kept them.
There was half a dozen of those dotted around the circuit.
But there was sort of humps, there was chicanes.
Yeah, there was all sorts.
It was a real, and we were like, is it BMXs?
That's what we thought.
Is it skateboards? Is it...
But then we were saying, but if it is, what are all those?
Yeah, why are they...
Why is there so many of those?
Why are they there?
But anyway, we had to find out. So as we got nearer, we didn't trespass because the gates were open and everything like that, but we saw a banner, and I think I had to look up, and I looked what all these manufacturers were, and they were all connected to radio controlled cars. So
it was clear as day at that point.
And I had a couple of mates at school, and you know, some of these radio controlled cars, I mean, they have petrol in them. You know, they are a proper
machines,
they're proper little machines.
You know, proper tyres.
You know, and this is a proper sport. So that was obviously you know, quite a serious enthusiast club and circuit. But unfortunately, I think we pretty much came to the conclusion, didn't we, that it had been stopped being used in COVID and hadn't really, because it was quite dilapidated. There was weeds. Yeah, the banner was torn and ripped.
Tracks of people having walked to it.
No, I mean, it was more of a, dare I say, a farm rubbish dump.
Yeah, there'd been a fire because they burnt the fence.
So that was sad.
But then you can imagine it might have been the families, the children, they were into it, they've grown up, they've gone off, and then it just loses its momentum.
That's a nicer thought.
No,
that's a nicer thought.
Yeah, I mean, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But no, it did fascinate us for a few hundred yards, didn't it?
And from there, it was quite a simple walk. The only feature from there until we hit the road was in the distance seeing Riseborough Hall.
Now, this is something that piqued your interest in.
Yeah,
You've done a bit of research about it, haven't you?
I have. And I think the two interesting things I would read about that, or say about that, should I say, is that in the last 1,000 years, there's only been 6 families that have owned the property. I think it's currently being redeveloped because there was a fire back in the 50s.
Yeah, 1952.
And those people, from what I saw or what I read, basically took the insurance money and ran.
Went to a cottage and lived.
Maybe it was too daunting.
They sounded that they were in
They were of an age, yeah, and they'll have looked at it and thought, well, do we use the money to do the house up, or do we cut our losses and
got a cottage and lived
and you know what? I don't
after.
think anyone complained, but it sounds like it's been renovated. I'm sure it'll be a cracking
So it's an
property
ongoing
again.
project. I mean, we've looked at it aerially since, haven't we? And parts of it, there's still a bit where the
Yeah,
roof
you can
is.
see what. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, that was, and we thought, perhaps we can walk back past that on the way back, but I think probably time constraints and
No, a drive was fine.
weather calling us was, that took that off the agenda. So again, I think what I remember from this farm track was the massive dikes that had been
They were
dug
huge, weren't they?
at the side.
And some have been dug recently.
So it's the Vale of Pickering. It's, it was a lake back in the day. They've got to manage the water, haven't they?
Well,
But
when
that
you
was
look at
an
NOS, there's dikes
industrial-
everywhere, absolutely everywhere for drainage and just keeping it off the fields.
Yeah.
But
And obviously, we're passing Normanby Manor, another big farming operation. So
oh yeah, huge.
they were
But
keeping-
the farm we came to wasn't quite on the same scale, was it? It was a sprawling place, but you could see it wasn't hugely.
the sheds weren't stocked with
Yeah,
the animals,
no,
were they?
no, they weren't,
They were
unfortunately.
no longer.
But the interesting thing there, it was quite, well, pardon me, I say quite sad. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Modern farming, that the farmer was there and she was tending to what we later discovered after a 10-minute conversation with her, a poorly calf.
Yeah.
She was putting food and drink literally under its nose.
Yeah, trying to just encourage it to drink even,
Yeah.
wasn't she?
I mean, its mother was there, but by the time we'd finished our conversation with her, the mother had wandered off, which makes you think that maybe mother knows best, and this calf wasn't going to see the day out. But more of that later.
Yeah.
More of that later.
And then out of there, wished her all the best, waved her a fond farewell, and up the road a little bit to, by contrast, a massive operation, rice farm.
Pig farm.
Pig farm.
Pig farm.
Yeah, walked through there. Nice straight road to a lovely little farm right on the bridge at Normanby, Bridge House Farm. And then we picked up the road a bit there, didn't we, going into this village that...
Well, and we know what's in that village. So, I mean, I'm not saying we didn't do the walk, did we? But we later discovered that what month will it have been? It'll have been the August or September.
Yeah, I think it was the September draw. but
O'May's house, but not before we'd passed the Sun Inn and dreamed that, well, if we won the O'May's house, that could be our local.
Even though it only opened at the end of the week.
Yeah, well, nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
But and I remember in Normanby we went in the church. Was it St Andrews?
St Andrews, yeah, very handsome.
Yeah, lovely little church. Yeah, I remember it got a nice organ. It was got a nice feel to it.
Yeah, there was 1,000 years of rectors on the wall.
Oh,
so
there was,
I
wasn't
guess
there?
from the name Normanby, and we know that Riseborough,
Yeah.
it's a Norman settlement, isn't it? So.
No, but it is a lovely little village. I mean, the
is.
notice board had got some good history on it,
And
which
lovely old
enjoyed
photographs,
looking at.
isn't it, of how it was. But
lovely English countryside village.
Yeah, but we struggled to find our footpath then, didn't
Yeah.
we? And thankfully,
I think it had been taken over by, funnily enough, the house where the O'May's house was.
Yeah, I think you had to go up that lane, didn't you?
Yeah.
But it was now gated and locked for the O'May's house and the farm behind
Not
it.
a problem though, because shortly up the road, and there's another path that joins the main public footpath. But we couldn't resist, could we? At the top of the hill, walking.
No, I thought
we'll have a look.
Have a little.
And you could see why they've chosen it, or bought the house, because it got a cracking view. And we just saw the rooftops.
We just could see, yes, because it backed onto the hill that we were on atop of, didn't it?
Yeah. And then there's a farm that we walked past, and again, it's funny how you remember certain things of walks, but those two massive tractors, And the thing that always amazes me about some farmhands is how young they are. Because these were
They
two
looked
young
like
lads.
They were, on their school holidays.
Yeah,
weren't they?
absolutely. But they were driving these tractors. They were almost dancing in them. They were just throwing them around, but so skillful because they were lifting up bales on those forks.
We started to descend the hill the other side, didn't we? And we couldn't stop watching him, could we? He was just straight, got the perfectly balanced. He prodded those bales exactly where he should.
And we'll say he probably wasn't old enough to drive on the road.
No, probably not.
But he handled that tractor with those forks on it like nothing at all.
Dangerous weapons. But...
And you don't think that when we got to the bottom of the hill there and turned right as if we were going to head now to Marton, that's a disused railway, because it was deadly straight for me. But there's nothing on the OS to suggest it is there?
Oh no, I thought we absolutely were nailed on.
I was convinced it was, but when you look at the map, I don't think it is. And we had to take a bit of a detour here. Well, we didn't take a detour. We actually went wrong, didn't we?
We were
because we followed. Well, we did what most people do. We followed the path we were on, which was shale or stone or driven.
It was a farm track.
Track. Thank you. But when we got to the end of the farm track,
and it was lined with an electric fence, wasn't it? So you didn't naturally keep looking left.
Correct. But sure enough, when we got to the end of the track, it was evident that we'd missed the footpath.
It was going back round to the farm,
because the footpath had been covered by an electric fence, which is fair enough. If you've got stock in a field, you're going to throw a fence up. At least it wasn't a permanent fence.
No, and we.
Pardon me.
It later became apparent that this was not a very popular footpath, was it? So.
Well, no, absolutely.
But I remember we
did we limbo or did we?
No, we used the walking poles.
That doesn't conduct electricity.
Well, I got a little bit of a frisson from mine. Yeah.
It was carbon, so I suppose maybe.
Yeah. So, but it was,
Anyway,
it was fun. But we
crossed it.
Now,
I'm pleased to say, and again we'll come on to this, that those cows were not interested in us at all.
Those ones weren't.
But
However,
the walk into Marton, we came across. It was evident, like you say, that the path wasn't used, because when we got to the fringe of the village, where we were 50 yards from the village, the footpath was it was completely impassable. I mean, there was nettles that were as dense as you could possibly imagine and taller than I was.
Yeah, and brambles and full grown
which would have been
trees.
Absolutely foolhardy. We needed a machete to get through. So, can you remember, we took a detour.
So we went left, didn't we, along the back of the back gardens.
To a new property.
Hoping that it was open, wasn't it? It wasn't fenced.
Correct.
If I remember correctly.
We were in someone's back garden.
Yeah, it was being renovated or built or whatever.
Well, it was a builder's.
Yes.
There was a van there that said it was a builder's.
And it was a weekend, so it was obviously his.
So the idea we had was to keep saying, hello, just
make it obvious that we
weren't sneaking about.
Struggling.
And when we got to the front of the house, the front door opened.
Yes.
And Mr. Property Owner opened the door and couldn't have been nicer. When we explained that we were making our presence known.
Yeah, that's why we were shouting
because we couldn't get down that footpath. And he said, "Oh, are you trying to come through then? You come through."
Yeah,
no.
Usher us through,
he thought we were going the other way, wasn't he?
And I said, "Oh no,
we're literally at the end of your drive. We've finished. Oh, cheers then. See you later." But lovely that, because you never know.
No,
you never know how things are going to go.
Be the same, coming into your back garden. It's a bit disconcerting, isn't it? So that's
Absolutely.
why we made our presence so known. But we were bent out of shape and trapped.
Well, we had no choice. We'd still be there now.
We couldn't get through that.
Hey ho. And then a quick walk into Marton.
We passed the lovely plant stall.
Oh, we did.
We didn't go back for courgettes, weren't we?
How many times have we said we'll go back and have a look and all the rest of it? And again, a memory of mine is that, unfortunately, that closed down pub.
Yes.
Right on the corner that you can imagine was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
Would have been the centre of life.
It would have been a coaching inn.
Crikey,
it was on the road. And
can't remember the name of it. It's not important. But
Apple Tree Inn. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Right, okay. Yeah.
But anyway, it marched the way into the village, didn't it? So we went and followed into Marton Centre then, didn't we, from there? Because we were on the fringe on the main road.
Over the bridge. And this now is what? Is it the...
It's the River Severn.
River Severn. Oh, it's spelt differently though, isn't it?
It's like the
Seven
number.
as in the number.
Yeah, not
That's it. Okay. And again, we were now... This is the turn, isn't it?
Yes.
This is the turn.
We're going back.
And I remember... this is right now, that... the sky became quite dark, quite foreboding, as we would say. And what was it, 10 minutes before the heavens opened?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was no more. And the good thing was we stayed along the side of that river and didn't go into open fields, so that we had a bit of cover.
I mean, it was again, not a well-used path. That was treacherous, that bit, because it was falling away. It was clay,
It wasn't used
soil,
at all,
it was slippy. And then we did get to the end of it where the gate was to go out into the next field, and that's where we had to stop and wait for a good 10 minutes.
And can you remember what was in that field? Some very well. See, I think back now, and if I look at the
Persistent,
video,
I'd say.
well, if I look at the video of it, we gave those cows a wide berth, and between us and the cows was a bit of a rise, a bit of a natural barrier, and we were, I can't remember this, but let's say 50 yards from them, but that wasn't far enough away for their liking, because they didn't have calves with them. And I think the polite phrase is to say they saw us off.
They did.
And, I made sure you were on the, I was between you and the cows. But even so, I'm not saying I was nervous, but I was aware. I kept having a quick look to make sure they were getting no nearer.
I was, as in this, but I could feel them because they were...
But that's what they did. Basically. Well, they were all gathering, and when one started, they thought, "Who's this, and why are they here?" And
I thought, if I don't look at them,
they're not there.
But no, they won't.
Like
think
Doctor Who.
The
angels.
But anyway, we did get through to the gate. Obviously, we had to tell the tale. But it is.
It's a stark reminder. Yeah, they're not pets. No,
they're farm animals.
They're a ton of
an instinct.
Absolutely.
And absolutely, and we'd given them a massive wide berth.
We had.
We've walked nearer to them.
We've walked through cows before.
Yeah. I mean, the calf's been laying on one side, and they've not bothered. But
so you can't guess, can you? You can't second guess.
You don't know what their temperament is. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, that was...
For all we know, early that morning, they'd had a bit of an incident.
Yeah, could have had a dog.
Who knows?
Chasing them or something.
But anyway.
But anyway, we made it through there.
And then, so we got onto the road, and then we did a little detour away from that. And the next thing I can remember is we came across those two people, which we had a bit of a chat with them, which is great. I love this, because they were doing something interesting, which was, we saw them with a chainsaw, but they weren't felling trees. What they were doing was actually cutting, should we say, slices?
I'm going to call them slices, yeah.
Slices off a fallen tree, and a very old fallen tree. And basically we said, as nice politely as we could, what are you doing?
Yeah, is this a craft?
And we found out that it was it was father and daughter. It was her wedding that was coming up, and he was cutting these for her too. And you think they were going to become as charges or servers
or table settings or
something like that.
Yeah, he goes, she's got some ideas. He said she's doing something fancy with these.
I didn't know if they were going to be, like salt. What do you do when you burn into it? And could have been all sorts, couldn't it? But lovely, really. And then it could tell that we were recovering from a cold, because there was a bit of a rise up to the road through a long field, which we both felt. It did have
an incline on it.
Yeah, we both felt that. And I think it must have been the heat.
Yeah, I think the sun had come back out after the deluge, and it was humid as well.
But it was evident that we weren't 100%.
And again, it was tricky I think the hedge was quite thick. It was tricky to get out. And then it was at that point that I said, are we going to go and see if we can see this Riseborough Hall? And I think we'd had enough. What with the being chased by cattle.
Yeah, no, and again, when you look at a map, you do everything, don't you? How do you feel? What time is it?
What's the weather look like again?
How far back is it? And it's still it was a few miles back, because we, within 2 minutes down that hill, we were back at the farm with this sickly calf.
And it was still there.
It was still there. Let's take that positive.
Still there.
Let's take that positive.
Let's assume any worse.
Let's assume that later that afternoon, it got on its feet
and had a good drink and
wandered off.
Yeah, but Mum was well up the hill.
Mum was nowhere to be seen.
And then I think at that point,
it was a straight run back into Pickering. I mean, again, looking at the map and everything like that. Can you remember all the dragonflies we saw as we got to the farm on the dismantled
Costa
railway?
Lane, yeah.
Yeah.
They were literally littered all over.
Well, I don't think we've had a year where we've seen as many dragonflies
in the various different stages of life cycle.
So back through the spooky wood, back along Costa Beck, and then again
another pause on the bridge over the
for
Beck,
a last look, because
it
was lovely. But again, you just come straight out and boom.
I think we were greeted by siren. There was a
we
literally turned out and there was
back to reality.
Yeah, it was like somebody had just turned a switch on.
But it was a good long walk. It was, I think it was 11, 12 miles, something like that. And again, we weren't 100% health-wise, but...
and it pays to just look at these almost derelict public footpath signs at the edge of towns.
That's a good point.
And then just see...
Because it was the old green style, wasn't it? It wasn't a new... And there'll be something of interest, because if it's that old, there will be something of interest.
No, it was a good one. Enjoyed it.
Costa Beck.